This encounter happened 7 years ago, back in 2018, when I decided to take a holiday to Europe, Greece to be exact. I was staying in a small coastal village on one of the lesser-known islands, not one of the tourist hotspots like your Santorini or Mykonos. I'd gone for the first time to Seriphos because I wanted somewhere quieter, somewhere I could hike, take pictures, and just get away from everything, and enjoy some scenic views without the crowds. I'd been there for about 5 days when I decided to do a long coastal hike that a local had mentioned to me at the cafe I'd become familiar with, near my hotel. After getting on a first-name basis with the staff and having plenty of conversations, I'd asked where the best spots were to take in the beautiful scenery and explore. He told me there was an old footpath that wound along the cliffs and led to some hidden coves where hardly anyone went. It wasn't an official trail, but he said if I followed the coastline and kept the sun to my left, I'd find my way, and it would be worth the journey as it wasn't a well-known spot. It sounded perfect, peaceful, remote, the kind of off-the-map experience I was craving. I packed a backpack with some supplies, water, sun cream, and my camera, and set off around 10 a.m., making sure I would have ample time there. The first couple of hours, my adventure was great. The path was rough, more like a goat track than a hiking trail to be honest, but the scenery was unbelievable. Sheer cliffs dropping into turquoise water, white houses in the distance catching the sun, the air warm and salty. I passed a few old stone walls and what looked like an abandoned olive grove, but otherwise I didn't see a single person on my journey. By mid-afternoon, though, I realized I'd been hiking for hours, and I began to feel I'd gone further than I was meant to. The path had pretty much disappeared, and the sun had started its slow drop. I figured I should turn back at that point, but I wanted to get one last photo before my journey back. I'd spotted a cove down below, a perfect semicircle of sand between two cliffs. Getting down there wasn't easy. I had to climb part way down a rocky slope, sliding and grabbing onto some dried-up bushes to steady myself. My legs were shaking by the time I reached the bottom, but the cove was beautiful up close. Quiet, sheltered, not a footprint in sight that I could see. But that's when I heard it. The sound. It was faint at first, like distant shouting, or maybe laughter carried by the wind. I figured maybe some other hikers had found their way down a different route, but as I got closer to the mouth of the cove, the noise sharpened into something else. Voices. They sounded rough and angry, and then I heard something that sounded like crying. I stopped walking. The noise was coming from behind a cluster of rocks near the back of the cove's edge. Curiosity got the better of me, and wanting to know what the noise was all about, I crept closer, staying low. When I peeked around the rocks, my stomach turned. I wasn't expecting to see what I saw. There were 5, maybe 6 people around there. All male, all in dark clothes, their faces shadowed under caps and sunglasses. A couple of them were standing around a small boat that was half pulled onto the sand. 2 others were holding someone. Another man, who looked to be in his 30s from what I could tell. They were holding him by his arms as he was on his knees and his face was bloody. He was clearly scared. I couldn't understand everything they were saying. It was obviously all in their own language, but fast and angry. The tone of their voices said it all. They weren't having a friendly conversation, and they weren't messing around. One of the men shouted something, and I was shocked when he struck the man across the face. The sound echoed off the cliffs. I remember feeling this sick, pulsing shock in my chest as I realized what I was seeing. It wasn't some drunken argument or fishing dispute. This was something criminal. I don't know if it was smuggling, trafficking, or something else, but the look on that man's face told me whatever was happening wasn't going to end well for him. I froze there for what felt like forever, trying to decide what to do. I don't know why, but I had a moment's urge to help. But then my brain screamed at me to back away quietly, to get out before anyone noticed, and that's the option I chose. I started to move, one slow step backward at a time, but not looking where I was going. It was then my foot slipped on a rock. Just a tiny scrape sound, but I lost my balance, dropping my camera, and that motion was enough. One of the men turned their head sharply, and as I looked back, our eyes met for a split second. His expression changed from confusion to rage, and he shouted something I didn't understand, but I didn't need to. I turned and ran. I'd never run like that in my life. I scrambled up the slope I'd come down on, clawing at rocks and bushes, cutting my hands and tearing my clothes. Behind me, I could hear shouting. Multiple voices now, angry, furious. When I glanced back, I saw two of them at the base of the slope, and they were both armed with knives. I don't think I've ever known fear like that. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The sun was going down fast, and the landscape had turned into a maze of rocks and shrub. I didn't even know which direction the village was anymore. I just kept moving uphill, thinking that maybe I could get a vantage point and reorient myself. At one point, I heard the crack of what sounded like something being thrown at me as it echoed across the rocks. I ducked down instinctively and crawled behind a boulder. My breathing was ragged, every sound in the still air magnified, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the caw of a distant bird. I stayed like that for several minutes, heart hammering, listening. Then I heard them again, closer now, maybe 50 meters away, calling out to each other. They were clearly searching for me, and in that moment, I feared being caught. I hid and stayed as still as possible until I was sure they had moved further down the slope. Then I started moving parallel to the coast, trying to stay out of sight. My legs were trembling, my hands raw and bleeding. I remember thinking, this is how people disappear. No one knew where I was. My phone had no signal. If they caught me, I'd just vanish into these hills and never be found. After what felt like hours, I finally saw something familiar. A faint dirt road cutting across the hillside. I followed it, half running, half stumbling, until I eventually found my way back to some sort of civilization. Not the way I had got there, and still lost somewhat, but I was around people and heading the right direction. I knew I had to, and it was the right thing to do, so I contacted the local police, and after explaining what I'd witnessed, they came out to me after around an hour. A couple of officers went to check the area that night, but by the time they got there, the cove was empty. No boat, no people, no sign of a struggle. The police later said they'd keep an eye out, but they hinted it was probably some local argument. Nothing to worry about. I could tell they didn't want to dig too deep. Maybe they knew something I didn't. I left the island a few days later. All I could think on those last few days was the face of that man, their fear and hurt, and then the look in the eyes of the one who saw me. The anger on his face. I still think about it sometimes. How close they came to catching me. How easy it would have been for me to just vanish. And I still wonder what happened to that guy in the cove. Sometimes, when I hear about people going missing on holiday, or hikers never coming back, I remember that night. And I realize just how thin the line is between a once-in-a-lifetime adventure and a story that never gets told. Even in the middle of nowhere, anything can happen. So please, be careful out there when traveling. This encounter happened to me and my girlfriend a few years ago when we were hiking in Eastern Europe. We're from the UK and have often travelled to different parts of Europe for hiking getaways. On this particular trip, I've never been able to explain what we saw, and to be honest, I don't even like thinking about it. But every now and then, something will remind of that night. We'd planned a long weekend hike through a national forest. It was supposed to be a break from the world and everyday life, just 3 days of hiking trails, camping under the stars, and enjoying the peace and quiet. The first day went great. We covered a lot of ground, set up our tent near a clearing, and settled in for the night. We cooked a simple dinner over a campfire, and soaked in our environment, and we genuinely felt good being away from work and the daily stresses. By the time it got dark, the forest had settled into this heavy silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of branches. And planning what we would do the next morning. As we sat talking, that's when we heard it. At first, I thought it was an animal call, maybe a fox or a deer, but it didn't sound right. It was a long, drawn-out wail, high-pitched at the start, and then it broke down into something guttural, almost human. As I listened out, I managed to pinpoint the direction it had come from. It came from not far off where we were, maybe 100 or so meters through the trees. We froze, both listening. It didn't repeat right away, and as we sat listening out, my girlfriend asked me if I thought it was an animal. But I couldn't give her an answer, as I didn't know what kind of animal made that noise. I've heard foxes scream before. It wasn't that. It wasn't an owl or a wolf or anything I could place. We should have just left it at that and got in the tent for the night. We should have ignored it. But curiosity got the better of us and walked quietly towards the direction of the sound. The deeper we went, the less normal it felt. The woods seemed darker, heavier. Every step crunched too loud. We slowed our pace until we were almost creeping. Not 5 minutes into the walk, that's when we saw it. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light. But no, on a second glance, it wasn't. Ahead of us, maybe 30 meters away, something was moving between the trees. It was a person. Or at least, it looked like one. But they were naked. Their body was pale and skinny, and they were walking unsteadily, like their joints didn't quite bend right. Their head lolled side to side as they moved. It just looked fucking weird. I don't know why, but we just stood there in shock, holding our breath, watching. We whispered back and forth. What the hell are they doing out here? No clothes, no shoes, miles from the nearest town. But the longer we looked, the less sure we were that it was even really just a person. The figure didn't hear or see us as it kept walking, deeper into the forest. Again, against our better judgment, we decided to follow more. I don't know why. Maybe we thought they were hurt. Maybe we just couldn't wrap our heads around what it was we were seeing. As we followed its trail, we kept a good distance, just far enough to watch where it went. Eventually, it came to a rocky slope. At the base of it was a cave, a dark opening in the earth I hadn't noticed until then. Without hesitating, the figure walked straight inside. We stopped at the mouth of the cave, just staring for a few minutes to see if they decided to come back out. As we saw nothing, I decided to get a little closer with my flashlight beam. It shook in my hand as I tried to shine it inside, but as I edged closer and managed to shine further into the opening, I saw the figure was just standing there, maybe 10 feet in, its back to us, perfectly still. I had frozen my tracks, lowering my light, not expecting to see them standing there. That's when it moved its head. Not a turn, not a casual glance. Its head tilted, slowly, unnaturally, like it had just realized we were behind it, like it sensed us. We stood, glued to the spot. I didn't think either of us even breathed. Then, in the edges of my flashlight beam, I saw them. Eyes, dozens of them, low to the ground, high up near the walls, reflecting the light, watching us. I slowly turned to see the fear on my girlfriend's eye as I signaled we should back away. But my attention was soon drawn back into the clearing as shapes began to move in the darkness. Human-like figures, all pale, all silent, stepping forward into view. One by one, they emerged just enough that I could see them properly. Thin limbs, 2 long arms, their eyes glinting back at me. I didn't know what the hell was going on, and my girlfriend was terrified at this point as she tugged at my arm to quickly go. The thing we had followed started to turn slowly, staring as if it knew all along we had been following. I won't lie, that broke us, seeing them stare, moving towards us. We broke from our trance and bolted. I don't even remember making the decision. 1 second, we were frozen. The next, we were sprinting through the trees, branches whipping at our faces, stumbling over roots in the dark. Behind us, echoing from the cave, came that same horrible wail we'd heard earlier. We didn't stop until we saw the glow of our campfire through the trees. When we finally reached it, my girlfriend said what we were both thinking. She wanted to grab everything and leave immediately. But I forced myself to slow down long enough to shove our valuables into our packs. We left the tent, the stove, everything else behind. We just wanted out, and to not risk whatever was back in that cave following and coming after us. We hiked in the dark for hours, until we finally reached a ranger station near the edge of the park. By then, the sun was starting to rise. We didn't tell the rangers what we'd really seen. Just said we'd heard strange noises and gotten spooked. I don't think they would have believed us if we had told them, in all honesty. To this day, I don't know what we stumbled on. I don't know if they were people or something else. All I know is they weren't normal. The way they moved, the way they watched us, it was like being caught in a room full of predators and knowing you just made a mistake you might not get out of. It doesn't always pay to investigate in the middle of nowhere, as you don't truly know what's out there. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if we'd stepped further into that cave. If we'd stayed frozen for a second longer. I didn't camp for a while after that. I'm back to hiking now, but it always gets me thinking back to that night. What I did learn from that experience is, I will never investigate a sound like that again. Thank you for joining us and watching this chilling video. We hope you enjoyed this topic and you found the fear within. What other subjects would you like to hear soon? Let us know in the comments what creeps you out. If you're new here, say hello. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Become a part of the Horror Motives world. See you soon with another terrifying video.